The 2016 Paris Agreement reflects a global consensus to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, attain a net zero carbon future, and to contain this century's global temperature rise within 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. However, within the built environment industry, a compliance of all newly constructed buildings designed to LEED Platinum levels will still result in a 3 degrees Celsius rise in global temperature. Today, 3 leading industry practitioners give their take on the issue, urging us to save both our environment and our heritage, to stop architectural deforestation before it is all too late.
In the context of the built environment, when we look at this study, you find that there is a particular concept that actually does not exist in nature, and that is waste. Nothing is wasted in the natural environment. Everything is circular. Demolishing an existing building which has got reasonable lifespan in it and rebuilding another one is tantamount to creating artificial waste. The whole concept is wasteful.
In fact, not just buildings of this era, but you will see that buildings that last for hundreds, thousands of years, they were built without heavy reliance on artificial systems, right? I mean, they are very they're handmade, right? They are low tech, but they have stood the test of time. In fact, the ironic thing is whatever we have built in the last maybe 80-90 years in concrete is not as lasting as buildings that were built in timber and brick, right? Or stone.
I would question some of those things that create that value system. That what makes it cheaper to demolish a building? Why is it cheaper to destroy something before we build something else? There may be something wrong with that measure. So it's a distorted value system that we currently have, which sort of distorts everything else that we do.
One of the most effective alternatives to arresting global temperature rise is upgrading and retrofitting existing buildings, especially high-rise concrete modernist megastructures, as opposed to demolishing them and erecting new ones. Indeed, the greenest building is the one already built. The key to unlocking the atrocities of building demolition is understanding their embodied carbon dioxide.
Retaining a building will significantly reduce your embodied carbon footprint. Even if an existing building, you remove everything else, keep the structural frame, you've already saved 5 to 600 kilograms of CO2 per square meters. That is significant.
To build a typical 40-story reinforced concrete megastructure, approximately 51 million kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalent is emitted into the atmosphere, the same amount of carbon dioxide sequestered by 8.75 million trees. If it is virtuous to preserve 10,000 hectares of forest, it is better to retain such a structure. Demolition wastes away the already embodied carbon dioxide of existing structures, and rebuilding further consumes carbon dioxide in the production of new building materials. As such, tearing down a 40-story concrete megastructure is akin to burning down a forest.
So we know that concrete buildings embody energy and huge carbon footprint by their sheer size and scale, right? And especially in the context of Singapore being a compact city-state, many of such buildings occupy our skyline, and you can imagine the knock-on impact if actually we can come up with a more environmentally sustainable way to redevelop rather than tear down and rebuild. So this increasingly has become one of the key arguments for conservation of modern movement heritage.
Indeed, often referred to as ugly, rundown, and seen as urban blights, large concrete modernist structures are primarily perceived at surface value. People are reluctant to look beyond these labels to see what they can offer. And the rate at which modernist buildings in Singapore are being demolished is a case for concern for both environmentalists and heritage enthusiasts.
One of the biggest challenges that we see or rather we face in promoting this paradigm shift, be it in Singapore or even globally, is really mindset. And the part about mindset that I think is most key for us to move away from is about indifference or worse, denial.
They're also part of our collective memories, and demolishing them can have the effect of alienating people. There are cultural aspect of existing buildings. It shows that you look at a building, you look at the past. You look at the past, you learn from the wisdom of the past. Looking at the past also helps you understand why it is that we are doing some of the things that we are doing in the present time. And looking at the past not only helps us see the past, see the present, it also helps us see the future. So every time you demolish a building, it's like burning a book on history. You just deprive the future generations from reading about the past, seeing the past, or going to a building and experiencing.
One of the difficulty in conserving modernist building is the perception, right? Perception that they are not worthy of conservation. First of all, they are still relatively young compared to older buildings. Second is perception of the aesthetics, because unlike older buildings, they are not as ornamented or easy to appreciate, right? So you end up having skeptics who feel that they are not beautiful, so why should we keep them? The third difficulty, I think, is the condition of these buildings, which adds to the undesirability of how they appear. And it's not just appearance, it's also inconvenience of people who have to deal with the poor condition the buildings are in, generally because of poor maintenance. So one way to overcome the aesthetic debate is to focus on what is at the core of the issue, which is to widen the discussion to a broader discussion, and in this case it's about the climate crisis, right? And also environmental sustainability.
But at a practical level, most buildings have the inherent ability for them to be adapted and adopted into the new design, integrated in a new development, and we must find it mandatory for ourselves, and ideally policymakers would make it mandatory, that we must explore all those opportunities, all those possibilities of retaining the building, integrating it into the new, to make it relevant so that it is not obsolete.
There are factors that influence how decision making swings towards retention and rehabilitation. So to give you an example, a recent case is the OUE downtown, which is a retrofit of the old DBS tower and podium. We found out that since 1970s, when it was first designed, there's already quite forward thinking of incorporating some flexibility of change of use through the layout, through the planning, and through the structural design strategy. So I guess things like this help developer to, in the assessment, whether or not it's a better option to keep the building and retrofit or to tear down and rebuild. So flexibility is one factor.
Very good example of how this collaboration between private sector and authorities can take place can potentially be seen in a recent article of the call for the redevelopment of the Golden Mile complex. So what's exciting is this whole refreshing approach to look at development by prioritizing conservation first to start. I think the second part is in the support of that, the kind of adjustments in regulation and the added incentive that the planning agencies are putting in to encourage this shifts in thinking and approach to development. I would say if this project can come out successful, it will set at least the stage for a lot of such alternative approach to come.
So it's definitely a good test case if it's taken up for testing this idea of green retrofit, pushing the envelope of this green retrofit, so that for once something quite definitive can be done, like calculating the amount of carbon footprint and body energy in its existing structure and fabric, right? And then after the conversion, how does it all work out?
In Singapore, the Greenmark certification scheme is a green building rating system designed to evaluate a building's environmental impact and performance. Since 2008, Greenmark certification is mandatory for all new buildings and existing buildings undergoing major retrofits.
One of the primary instruments was our Greenmark Scheme, and of course still active. That was introduced, not wrong, in January 2005, so quite incredible, almost 15 years in the making, and it has also evolved into, I would say, the latest measures of pushing towards super low energy kind of building, idea of zero waste, and I think these are all the various mechanisms that are in place to allow the entire industry, not just in terms of raising awareness, but laying out concrete plan for tangible action. But there's a big but. We all know that more can be done.
Currently in BCA Greenmark considerations, scoring is not really given to the fact that embodied energy actually is captured, like choosing not to demolish the structure.
Greenmark LEED certification are part of those positive movements, positive actions that we have taken as within the industry. Are they good? Yes. Are they good enough? No.
Like I said, the signs are clear, and the science behind this pending crisis are also very evident. So it's very important that, again, as part of the larger fraternity, be it it's not just the state or the architects, but the developers, the builders, and all stakeholders of the industry needs to really come together.
Construction Declares is a movement that started around middle of last year, 2019. It started by a declaration made by 17 Sterling Prize winning architects out of the UK to declare that they believed the situation was critical, threat to the climate, threat to biodiversity was reaching and has reached a critical stage, and urgent actions need to be made by everyone, in that case the architects and practitioners within the built environment.
Obviously, the whole idea of this banding together with fellow friends and fraternity is to advocate for faster change. And then together we share knowledge, and then we look at what are better and more responsible way of, say, be it design, or be it construction, or even be it about maintaining buildings, or looking at even preserving buildings as an alternative approach.
I do think that as this issue of climate crisis becomes more urgent, as we really can feel it, we have to really stop skirting the issue and start to embrace this as a challenge that needs to be actively addressed.
Once the mind is open to such shifts, I think the rest will follow, right? And the change, we all know, always create a lot of discomfort and disruption to start.
Demolition must really be the very, very, very last resort after having explored all other opportunities, because it is like burning a book, it is like burning a forest, and these are bad things.
If the fundamental premise of architecture and design is to address the challenges facing humanity, and in this case, climate change, then how can we even fathom tearing down buildings and structures which are still well and good? If large-scale forest fires worry you, then the demolition of buildings, of which we are often so indifferent to, should unsettle us much, much more.